What's good, math family? In today's video, we're going to look at an EOC exam prep and we're going to touch on about 20 problems that you may see on your exam. So we have a quadratic equation in parabola and they want us to match the correct equations to the graph. So in answer choice A, they're talking about the x-intercepts. So if we set our intercepts x minus 2 to 0 and we solve, we'll have x is equal to 2. And if we do the same thing with x minus 4 is equal to 0, we'll get x is equal to 4. So just based off this equation, my x-intercepts are correct for A. Now, when we go to B and C, we have to pay attention to the vertex, HK, right? Because when we're in that vertex form, we know HK represents the vertex of the parabola. My vertex is what? It's going to be positive 3, negative 1. So when we look at our answer choices, our next answer choice would have to be B because it has the correct vertex. If we picked C, we're saying that the vertex would be positive 3 for X and positive 3 for Y, which would be that red dot, and this is incorrect. Now, the last answer choice, what we have to do to properly solve is basically to multiply those two binomials so that we could get the actual quadratic equation. So we have x minus 2 on top, x minus 4 on the bottom. If you flip them around, you'll still get the right answer. So we have x squared minus 2x minus 4x plus 8. Like terms run diagonal. When we write this in standard form, we have x squared minus 6x plus 8. So the last answer choice should be D. In this problem, we're dealing with rational exponents. And when we're multiplying exponents with the same base, we have to add the exponents, but they're fractions. So what we have to do is rewrite this with common denominators. So we're going to use 12 as a denominator for these fractions. So when I look at my first one, 1 over 3, I would have to multiply bottom and top by 4 so that we have the same denominator of 12. Now, when I go to my second fraction, 1 over 4, I will multiply the bottom and top by 3. So we'll get 3 over 12. Now that we have a common denominator, all we need to do is add. So our final answer should be x to the 7 over 12 power. So the answer choice is A. Just make sure you read because they're going to try to get some of you all by just looking at the exponent and the numerator and denominator. This problem focuses on completing the square, but we're not actually solving. We're just switching it from its current standard form to this following form on our screen. So the first thing we have to do is isolate that C term by subtracting 13. So we have x squared plus 10x is equal to negative 13. And these lines you see, family, this is just to let you know we're adding something. So to complete the square, we take half of that b term and then we square it. So half of 10 is 5. 5 squared is positive 25. Yes, we are going to add it on both sides of the equation. So now when I simplify, my right side, this turns into positive 12. And to get the binomial, all we need to do now is take this same b and just divide it by 2. So when I divide 10 by 2, we get x plus 5. This is the binomial that would get us that trinomial. So my final answer in this question would be B. However, let's say they wanted us to solve this. So if we were going to solve, the next step would be take the square root of the left side to cancel out the exponent, do the same thing on the other side. So now as a result, I have x plus 5 is equal to plus or minus, and let's break this down. Radical 4 times 3, we simplify even further to get plus or minus 2 radical 3. So now the last thing we need to do is isolate my x. So if we're solving for this quadratic equation, it would be x is equal to negative 5 plus or minus 2 radical 3. In this problem, we're dealing with slope. And we're going to write the equation for this table in the form y is equal to mx plus b. But let's just focus right here, right? Because we know when we make x 0, the y-intercept is -2. So off rip, we could already eliminate answer choice C. Now, what we need to do is to actually find the slope. So we have to do that formula. Oops, wrong variable. We have to do that formula y2 minus y1 is equal to x2 minus x1. So as a result, I'm going to use my first two ordered pairs. So -2, -6, and then we're going to use 0, -2. So when I set this up, we have -6 minus -2, right? This is going to give us a -4 on top. And on the bottom, we're going to have -2 minus 0 to get -2 on bottom. So my final slope, m, is going to be equal to +2. So now when we go back to this, b is gone, y is gone. We should know that final answer is A. If we put it all together, right? Y is equal to my slope m, which is 2 times x, and we know the y-intercept, like we said before, is -2, so that is our final answer. So we're simplifying cube roots, and we have to know our perfect cubes. So when we go into the first radical, we could simplify this as the cube root of 27 times 3. And when it comes to the variables, I like to split them by multiples of 3. So we have x to the third times x, right, to the first power. Y squared stays the same. And then z to the 12 stays the same because we can divide that evenly by 3. So I'm going to simplify. 27 turns into its cube root, which is 3. 3 stays under the radical. X to the third comes out as x. Our single x stays under the radical. Y squared stays under the radical. And z to the 12th now turns into z to the 4th power. And like I said, under the radical, we have the cube root of 3xy squared. Now when we go over to the second radical, we could break this down as the cube root of 8 times 3. And when we go to the variables, I'm going to change x to the 7th as x to the 6th times x. Y squared stays the same. And because we could divide 27 by 3 evenly, we're going to leave z to the 27th power as is. So now we simplify. Cube root of 8 comes out, which is 2. 3 stays under. X to the 6th turns into x squared. Just divide your exponents. X to the first power stays under the radical. Y to the second power stays under the radical. And then z to the 27. Once we divide that by 3, we're going to get z to the 9th power. And then under the radical, we have 3x y to the second power. Now, when you look at our answer choices, we don't have that answer. But what we can do is factor this out. So we would have 3x z to the 4th plus 2x squared z to the 9th, right? That could be in parentheses, and we're going to distribute it to the cube root of 3xy squared. So when I look at my answer choices, this should be an answer choice of A. In this problem, we're talking about dividing polynomials, and my best advice would be to rewrite it. So once we rewrite this, we would have 2x to the 4th minus 6x to the 3rd all over 2x. Now remember, we have to follow the properties of exponents. So once we start simplifying, right, 2x to the 4th over 2x is just going to give me x to the 3rd power, right? When we break this down, right, 4 minus 1 gives me x to the 3rd. When I go to my second one, right, -6x to the 3rd, Once we divide that by 2, that's going to give me -3. X to the third divided by x gives me x squared. That's gone. Now we go over to 4x squared. When we divide 4 by 2, that gives me 2. X squared minus x just gives me x. And then the last part, -3x over 2x, the x's cancel out and we can't divide evenly, so this is just 3 over 2. So when we look at our answer choices, the correct answer choice for this problem would be B. Do not try to add or subtract that first expression because these are not considered like terms. That's what they're hoping that you guys do. We're dealing with slope now, and they want us to write the equation of a line that has a y-intercept of 2. So if we understand this, this is a ordered pair, 0, 2. That's the y-intercept. And they want a line that is perpendicular to the equation. So what we have to do is to put this equation in slope-intercept form. So after we move and get y by itself, we'll have y is equal to -3x plus 6. Perpendicular slopes are the negative reciprocal. So that means A and B are eliminated. Those are parallel slopes. If we wanted a perpendicular slope, we'll take -3, turn it into a fraction, and then we would flip it, right? So now it becomes +1/3, right? It's a negative reciprocal. So if it's negative, it now becomes positive. So as a result, my answer choice is C. Let's say you did not know that. What we also could do is substitute into that point slope formula if you were not sure, but you have to get the slope correct. So now we substitute, we have y, and here goes the point we're putting in, right? Y minus 2 is equal to what? Our slope, 1/3, x, and then minus 0. That's the x coordinate for that ordered pair. So now we have y minus 2 is equal to 1/3x. Y is not by itself, so when we add 2, my final answer would be y is equal to 1/3x plus 2. And like I said, this is going to be answer choice C. So in our next problem, we're simplifying radicals. And there's 2 ways that we could do this. So if we go through and we distribute, we'll get radical 24 plus radical 36. But answer choice A is incorrect. Why? Because every time we have radicals, you always have to see if we could check, if we could simplify. Always check to simplify. So 24 turns into 4 times 6. And we know 36 is a perfect square, which is 6. So when we simplify, this is 2 radical 6 plus 6. And this is my final answer. Now another way we could have done this, let's switch colors real quick. We have radical 6 times radical 4 plus radical 6. This is a perfect square. So we could rewrite this as radical 6 times 2 plus radical 6. And when we do that now, we distribute, we'll have 2 radical 6. And anytime we multiply the same radicals, it's just a number without the radical. So we could save that multiplying and simplifying step. So correct answer should be B. So we're dealing with systems of equations, and we have to create the equations to properly solve. So we know Mark sold 461 tickets. We know we have student tickets, which cost $3, and we have adult tickets, which cost $4. And all together, we know all the sales equal to 1624. And now we need to figure out how many adult and student tickets are there. So let's use our variables, right? So X is equal to the number of student tickets, okay? And we know that Y is equal to the number of adult tickets. So now we need to create both of our equations. So let's do it like this, because they try to trick you. So we sold 461 tickets. What does that mean? That means when we add the number of student tickets plus the number of adult tickets, this is going to give us 461 total tickets, it told us. Now, the second equation, we're going to factor in the price. So we know that each student ticket costs $3. We don't know how many, but we're going to add that to how many adult tickets we sell, which costs $4. And we know once we combine those sales, it's going to equal to 1,624. So now we created our systems of equations. Now, what I would say to us is we're going to use the elimination process. I think that is the easier thing to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the second equation. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm going to multiply not the second, but the first equation. Let's multiply this by -3. So we have 3x plus 4y is equal to 1624. And when we rewrite our equation, we're going to have -3x minus 3y is equal to -1383. So x variable cancels out. We're left with y is equal to the difference of 1624 and 1383, which is going to be, let's see, 241. So we know that's the amount of what? Adult tickets we have. Now, family, when you go back, please pick the easier equation. And the easier equation is this one right here. So we know, let's switch to black. We know x plus 241 is equal to 461. We subtract 241 so we could figure out the amount of student tickets. And we know x is going to be equal to 220. So now when we look at our answer choices, we should know that the answer choice is going to be D. Please make sure you just pay attention because there are times when students will go in and pick A, but what they did was they flipped it around, okay? So just please make sure you guys pay attention to that. So this problem, we're graphing by intercept and they want us to match basically the equation with the graph. So let's figure out what our x and y intercepts are. So we have -2x minus 4 times 0 is equal to 16. So -2x is equal to 16. We know once we divide, our x-intercept is going to be -8. So let's check that, right? We know that this graph is incorrect because that's not -8. We know this graph is incorrect because that's not -8 either. So now we're down to either A or B. So let's check the y-intercept. So we make x 0 minus 4y is equal to 16. So when we simplify even further, family, right, we divide by -4, we know the y-intercept is -4. So when I look back at my only two answer choices, we know it has to be A, because when we look down at this point right here, this does not cross that y-axis at -4. So just pay attention to the very small details on your graphs because A or C easily could have got confused. So we're talking about literal equations, rearranging formulas. And they give us the formula right here. V is equal to pi r squared times h. And they want us to solve for r. If you didn't understand when they say in terms of, just look at our answer choices. They're telling us they want us to get it for r. So when I look at this problem, right, we notice that all three of these terms on the right side are being multiplied. So if I want to get r by itself, let's just divide by everything that is not r squared. So h and pi. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So now we have r squared is equal to v divided by pi times h. And these are based on solving equation rules. So now to get rid of this exponent, I'm going to take its square root, right? And what I do to one side, I do to the other. So square root and exponent cancel. We're left with r, and r is equal to the square root of v divided by pi times h. So when we look at our answer choices, we know that the answer choice is going to be the very first one. So we're dealing with an arithmetic sequence, and the first thing we want to do to be able to match the correct equation is figure out the common difference. So as we look at each of these terms, we notice that the common difference is going to be 6. So what I normally would do is just eliminate B and D because those have a common difference of 18. Now, the best thing to do is let's draw a table. And we're going to focus on the very first term because that's going to really let us know what do we need to do after we multiply by 6. So we know that 3 times 6 is 18. For us to get an answer of 0, we're going to have to subtract 18. And let's just test it, right? So this is what I mean. We have 6 times 3 is equal to 18. But if we want to get it to 0, what would we have to do? We would have to subtract 18 to get that 0. So what I like to do is I like to pick a random number. So let's say we picked 7. And let's follow that format. So we're going to do 7 times 6 minus 18. And let's see if that is equal to 24. So 7 times 6 is going to give me 42. Rewrite the rest of the equation. When I take care of my subtraction, 42 minus 18, this is going to give me 24 is equal to 24. So we know as a result, C is going to be the correct answer for this arithmetic sequence and equation. So we're dealing with multiplying polynomials, and a lot of the times you don't even have to multiply. You just have to look at a few things. So let's look at it like this. H squared negative 4h. When we multiply that, that is going to give us negative 4h to the third power. So that means G, H are going to be gone, right? Because they're positive instead of being negative. Now, what I could also do is go back and say, okay, negative 1 times positive 3 should give me a negative 3. And just like that, my answer is F with no work. However, let's just say you're someone who's like, Peters, I like that method, but I just want to make sure. I'm going to tell you guys, let's use the box method, okay? So we have h squared, 9h, negative 1 on top, negative 4h, 3 on the side. So when we go through, negative 4h to the third, negative 36h squared, plus 4h. Then I go to the bottom row, we have 3h squared, plus 27h, minus 3. And when we use this method, remember that our like terms run diagonal, so it's not hard for us to combine. So when I write this, when I write this in standard form, we're going to have negative 4h to the third minus 33h squared plus 31h minus 3. Same answer. So those are two ways we could have solved this polynomial expression by multiplying. So we have another completing the square problem. And I know a lot of students are probably going to want to solve this by regularly factoring, but we can't. We have to do completing the square. So the first thing we're going to do is subtract 49 from both sides. So x squared minus 12x is equal to what? 22 minus 49. When we do the math there, what we're going to get is negative 27. Now, let's complete the square. So Earlier in the video, we talked about this. We're going to do b divided by 2, then square it. So negative 6 squared gives me positive 36. We add it on both sides, right? So when I simplify my right side, I'm going to get positive 9. And then here, to get the binomial, let's just divide b by 2. So this is going to be x minus 6 squared. So the correct answer for this, if we're switching forms, would be A. Now let's say for some reason they wanted us to solve and they had the answers. So what we need to do is to go in and do the square root method to get rid of the exponent. Do the same thing on the other side. But just remember, this problem is a little different because we have a perfect square. So we have x minus 6 is equal to what? Plus or minus 3, right? We're going to add x, not add x, I'm sorry guys, add 6 on both sides. So we have x is equal to 6 plus or minus 3, all right? Or if you write it the other way, x is equal to plus or minus 3 plus 6. These are the same exact things as written backwards. So first equation, x is equal to 6 plus 3, x is equal to 9. My second equation, x is equal to 6 minus 3, x is equal to 3. So if they ask you to also complete the square, these are the proper steps to solve and get your x values, x intercepts. So we're dealing now with shading linear inequalities and family. We need to eliminate B and D because we would have to have a greater than or equal to sign or a less than or equal to sign to have a solid line. They gave us a dash line. So now all we need to figure out is if A or C is correct, and the way we do that is picking a test point. So let's go down to, let's try 0, 0. I always love using 0, 0. So we're on the first graph, A. So we're saying that what? 3 times 0 is less than negative 18 times 0 minus 27. So now we're saying that 0 is less than negative 27. Is that a true statement? No, that is incorrect. So we would not, the answer choice for A is wrong. Our problem has to be, our answer has to be C. And the way we're going to double check it is let's pick a point in the region and see if we get a true statement. So now the point that I have is negative 5, 0. So we have 3 times 0 is less than negative 18 times negative 5 minus 27. So now when we look at this is what we're going to have. 0 is less than 90 minus 27. 0 is less than 63. That is a true statement, so we would shade in the area where the point is. So when you have these type of problems, always use a test point in the shaded area to determine if it is the correct graph or not. So you're definitely going to see quadratic equations where the lead coefficient is greater than 1. So always remember that you can use the quadratic formula. You can. I would always tell you to use the slip and slide method, AC method. So we multiply A and C to get a lead coefficient of 1. So now we have x squared minus 13x plus 30. Now this is what we are trying to factor. So as a result, what two factors could give us this answer? Well, let's try this. We have x minus 10 times x minus 3. When we multiply, we get the positive 30. When we add negative 10 and negative 3, we get the negative 13x in the middle. Now, the biggest step is that same number we multiply by, we now have to go back and divide our factors by. And in this problem, we're not going to get any whole numbers. So what we're going to do is reduce both the fractions. So this is what I mean. This is going to turn into x minus 1 over 2. Divide both top and bottom by 3. Now, because we can't get a whole number, we're going to put that denominator in front of the x. So my first factor is 2x minus 1, right? That means we could eliminate D, C, and A. So my correct answer should be B. But let's just double check by finishing off the problem. So when we go back, this is going to turn into what? X minus 5 over 3. We divided 10 and 6 by 2. And because we can't get a whole number when we divide 5 by 3, we're going to take the denominator and put it in front of the x. So now this is 3x minus 5. When we check B, these are both the correct factors. So please use this method whenever you have a lead coefficient and you don't want to waste too much time with the quadratic formula. In the following function, they want us to understand the transformation of f times x minus 3. So if you remember the vertex formula, right? F of x is equal to a times x minus h squared plus k. So please remember, anything inside the parentheses, we're going to have a shift to the left or the right. All you need to do is set it equal to 0. K, we have a shift of either up or down. Positive, we go up. Negative, we go down. So x minus 3 is equal to 0. We're going to shift our graph 3 places to the right. So our answer choice would be D. So please make sure you remember that formula and how the transformations occur depending on H or K, or whether it's inside the parentheses versus outside. Inside the parentheses, left or right, outside, up or down, never forget it. So we have another quadratic equation and we need to match the graph. And if we look at the vertex, we know the vertex is 2, 8. So if the vertex is 2, 8, that means inside the parentheses, it should be x minus 2 because we shift to the right 2. So as a result, answer choice C and D are incorrect because they shift to the left side. So now we go back and you're saying, all right, Mr. Peters, how do I know if it's either A or B? And this is what I'm going to show you. So let's zoom in real quick, right? So remember, that number in front is just your slope. So to get to this point right here, did we go down 1, 2 over 1? No, we did not do that. What happens with the graph is we went down 1 over 1, 2. Remember, that number in front of our parentheses either stretches the graph or compresses it. So as a result, when we look at this problem, we should know that the correct answer choice is actually going to be B. So we have a problem where they're asking us for the measure of a specific angle, RST. So we're specifically talking about this angle right here. So number one, you have to know that we need to create an equation, and the equation needs to equal 180. So what equation are we going to have? X plus 2x plus 111 is equal to 180, right? We simplify. 3x plus 111 is equal to 180. Next thing we need to do now is subtract and isolate our x. So after we subtract 111, x is now by itself. We have 3 times x is equal to 180 minus 111, which is 69. So now we have to divide by 3 to get x absolutely by itself. And we get x is equal to 23. Now, a lot of students are going to go and circle this answer. And family, this is wrong because they didn't ask us for x. They said, hey, what is the angle measure for RST? That's why I point that arrow there. So we know x is 23. We now got to multiply that by 2 to get 46. So the actual answer is B, 46 degrees. Please do not fall for that trick by moving too fast. So they're asking us for the equation of this linear function. And there's a few ways we could go about this. So if we look at this, right, this is obviously a negative slope, right? It's a negative slope because the way the line is, it's going downwards from left to right. So off rip, I should know that F and G are incorrect because they're positive slopes. Now the next thing I want to pay attention to is, hey, what is the actual y-intercept? The y-intercept is 4, and we know this equation is taking the form y is equal to mx plus b. So as a result, I should know that my final answer is going to be J. And if we want to test it, let's use our rise over run of 2 over 3. So I go down 1, 2, and I go over 1, 2, 3. There goes another point on the line, and I have confirmed it. Really hope that this Algebra 1 EOC exam prep was helpful for you, math family. If it was, smash the like button for us. Comment down below if you have any questions or concerns. And we just want to tell you guys, thank you so much for continuing to support us with Algebra 1 with Mr. Peters.